When a billionaire patriarch divided his fortune, his favorite grandson received nothing but a worthless, rotting farmhouse and a rusty iron key. The family laughed. They called it a cruel joke. But they stopped laughing when that key unlocked a subterranean secret that rewrote their history and destroyed their lives completely. The mahogany-paneled conference room at the law firm of Harrison, Gable and Stein felt more like a courtroom than a place of mourning. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Boston, mirroring the cold, ruthless atmosphere inside. At the head of the massive oak table sat William H. Cunningham, a senior partner whose grim expression gave nothing away. Gathered around him were the surviving heirs of Harrison Caldwell, a magnate who had built an empire in logistics and commercial real estate. Liam Caldwell sat near the back of the room, slightly separated from the rest of his family. He wore a modest charcoal suit that had seen better days, a stark contrast to the tailored Italian silk and designer mourning attire worn by his aunt, uncle, and cousin. For the last 5 years of Harrison's life, when the dementia had first begun to claw at the old man's brilliant mind, it was Liam who had stepped up. Liam had moved into the guest room, managed the private nurses, held his grandfather's trembling hand during the night terrors, and listened to his rambling stories of the past. The rest of the family, Uncle Robert, Aunt Margaret, and Cousin Beatrice, had only visited when they needed a check signed or a trust fund replenished. William cleared his throat, adjusting his reading glasses. "We are here to execute the final will and testament of Harrison Arthur Caldwell," he began, his voice dry and authoritative. The division of assets went exactly as the greedy room had anticipated. Uncle Robert, a man whose face was perpetually flushed with arrogance and expensive scotch, inherited the controlling stake in Caldwell Logistics, a company valued at roughly $400 million. Aunt Margaret, draped in black velvet, was awarded the Manhattan real estate portfolio and the beachfront estate in the Hamptons. Beatrice Hawthorne, Liam's aggressively ambitious cousin, who was busy checking her phone under the table, gasped in delight when she was granted the entirety of Harrison's liquid assets, offshore accounts, and a staggering stock portfolio. Between the three of them, they had just inherited nearly $1 billion. Liam sat quietly, his hands folded in his lap. He didn't care about the billions. He only hoped his grandfather had left him enough to pay off his mounting student debt and perhaps put a down payment on a small house. He had sacrificed his own career in architecture to be a full-time caregiver, a choice he never regretted, but one that had left him entirely broke. "And finally, to my grandson, Liam Caldwell," William read, pausing for a fraction of a second. The room fell utterly silent. Robert smirked. Beatrice leaned forward, her eyes glittering with malicious curiosity. "To Liam," William continued, his tone softening imperceptibly. "I leave the Oakhaven property located in Amenia, New York. In addition, I leave a sealed envelope containing a single iron key. It is my strict condition that Liam must never sell this land, nor allow any other member of the Caldwell family to set foot upon it." The lawyer reached into his leather briefcase and slid a thick, yellowed envelope across the polished table. It stopped directly in front of Liam. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Uncle Robert let out a booming, echoing laugh. "Oakhaven? Are you joking? That condemned pennold of kindling out in the woods?" Beatrice snickered, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. "Grandpa gave you the old hunting cabin, the one with the collapsed roof and the raccoon infestation? Oh, Liam, that is rich. I suppose that's what you get for playing nursemaid for 5 years. "Quiet, Beatrice," Aunt Margaret scolded, though she was smiling cruelly. Harrison always did have a strange sense of humor in his twilight years. Poor Liam, all those sponge baths and midnight panic attacks, and you get a toxic waste dump in upstate New York. Liam ignored their taunts. He picked up the envelope. It was surprisingly heavy. Breaking the wax seal, he tipped it over his palm. A large, blackened iron key slid out, heavy and cold, completely coated in decades of rust. There was no note, no explanation, just the key and the deed to a property that had been abandoned since the late 1980s. "Is there any financial stipend attached to the property?" Liam asked quietly, his voice steady despite the crushing weight of disappointment settling in his chest. "To help with property taxes or renovations?" "I am afraid not, Liam," William replied softly. "The deed and the key. That is the entirety of your inheritance." Robert stood up, buttoning his $1,000 suit jacket. "Well, if you need a loan for a bulldozer, Liam, you have my assistant's number. Come along, Beatrice Margaret. We have a lot of mourning to do." As the family swept out of the room in a cloud of expensive perfume and self-satisfaction, Liam remained seated, staring at the rusted key. He felt a profound sense of betrayal. It wasn't about the money. It was about the sentiment. Had his grandfather truly valued his 5 years of devotion so little? Had the dementia entirely erased Liam from Harrison's heart at the very end? 2 days later, Liam drove his battered sedan up the winding, overgrown dirt road toward Oakhaven. The Amenia property was completely isolated, surrounded by dense, encroaching woods. When the house finally came into view, Liam's heart sank further. It was a sprawling, Victorian-style farmhouse, but it was practically rotting into the earth. The paint had long since peeled away to reveal grey, splintering wood. The porch sagged dangerously, the windows were clouded with grime, and ivy choked the brick chimney. He parked the car and stepped out into the damp autumn air. The silence of the woods was oppressive. He walked up the creaking porch steps, half expecting the floorboards to give way, and pushed open the unlocked front door. The interior smelled of mildew, wet wood, and decades of stagnant air. Dust motes danced in the pale shafts of light that managed to pierce through the filthy windows. Liam stood in the center of the ruined living room, clutching the heavy iron key in his pocket. His family was right. This wasn't an inheritance. It was a burden. But as he looked around the dilapidated space, a stubborn resolve ignited within him. Harrison Caldwell was a brilliant, calculated man. Even in his mental decline, he rarely did anything without a purpose. Liam pulled the rusted key from his pocket and stared at it. It had to open something, and Liam was not going to leave Oakhaven until he found out exactly what it was. The first week at Oakhaven was a grueling test of Liam's endurance. The farmhouse had no running water, and the electricity was spotty at best, relying on an ancient fuse box that hummed menacingly whenever he turned on a light. He spent his days hauling out rotting furniture, clearing years of accumulated debris, and patching the worst of the leaks in the roof. Every muscle in his body ached, and his hands were covered in blisters and splinters. The isolation was compounded by the relentless digital mockery from his family. Beatrice seemed determined to document her newfound wealth for the sole purpose of torturing him. His phone constantly buzzed with notifications. A photo of Beatrice holding a glass of champagne on the deck of a sleek new yacht, captioned, "Rough day at the office. Hope the rats at Oakhaven aren't biting, cousin." Another message came from Uncle Robert's assistant, offering Liam a minimum wage job in the Caldwell Logistics mailroom as a family favor. Liam ignored them all, throwing his phone onto an old mattress he had dragged into the living room. His obsession had become the key. Every evening, by the flickering light of a battery-powered lantern, Liam scoured the farmhouse. He examined every door, every cabinet, every antique trunk he found buried under the dust. Nothing matched. The key was unusually large, its teeth intricate and deeply cut, suggesting a complex locking mechanism that simply didn't belong to a standard residential door. He checked the barn out back, a terrifying structure that looked ready to collapse in a strong breeze, but found only rusted farm equipment and owl pellets. By the 10th day, doubt began to creep in. Had it all been a delusion? Perhaps Harrison really had just lost his mind at the end, handing Liam a random piece of scrap metal and a worthless deed out of sheer senility. The breakthrough happened by pure accident. A severe thunderstorm rolled through the Hudson Valley on a Tuesday night. Rain battered the fragile roof of the farmhouse, and a particularly heavy leak sprang up in the kitchen pantry. Liam rushed in with a bucket, slipping on the slick, water-damaged linoleum floor. As he fell hard onto his knees, he heard a strange sound. It wasn't the dull, solid thud of wood hitting wood. It was a hollow, metallic reverberation. Liam froze. He knocked his knuckles against the wet, peeling linoleum. Clang. Clang. It sounded like solid steel directly beneath the flooring. His heart hammering against his ribs, Liam scrambled for his tools. Using a crowbar and a utility knife, he began to furiously rip away the ugly, yellowed 1970s linoleum. The adhesive was old and brittle, flaking away in dry chunks. Beneath the linoleum was a layer of cheap plywood. Liam pried it up, the nails screaming as they were pulled from the joists. Beneath the plywood, taking up the entire floor space of the small pantry, was a massive plate of reinforced steel. It was utterly incongruous with the rest of the rotting farmhouse. The steel was thick, painted with a matte grey, rust-resistant coating that looked industrial. In the center of the plate was a recessed handle, and just above it, a heavy, circular keyhole embedded directly into the metal. Liam's hands shook as he reached into his pocket and pulled out the rusted iron key. He wiped the dirt and sweat from his forehead. Kneeling on the cold floor, he inserted the key into the slot. It slid in perfectly, the complex teeth aligning with a satisfying, heavy click. He took a deep breath and turned it. For a moment, it resisted, cemented by years of disuse. Liam gritted his teeth, applying all his weight. With a loud, grinding screech that echoed through the empty house, the internal tumblers disengaged. Liam grabbed the recessed handle and pulled upward. The steel door was incredibly heavy, but it was counterweighted by a sophisticated hydraulic system hidden beneath the floorboards. With a soft hiss of escaping, pressurized air, the trapdoor swung open, revealing a square shaft plunging into the earth. A rush of cool, surprisingly dry air wafted up from the darkness, carrying a faint scent of machine oil and old paper. Liam grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight and clicked it on, angling the beam downward. Instead of a dirt root cellar, the light illuminated a set of pristine, diamond-plate steel stairs spiraling down into a concrete shaft. It looked like the entrance to a military bunker. Gripping the handrail, Liam began his descent. The stairs spiraled down for at least 40 feet, taking him far below the foundation of the old farmhouse. At the bottom, he stepped off the metal grating and onto a smooth, polished concrete floor. He swung the flashlight around, his jaw dropping in sheer disbelief. The underground room was enormous, easily the size of a commercial gymnasium. It was completely encased in thick concrete walls and reinforced with heavy steel support pillars. It was entirely climate-controlled. Liam could hear the faint, steady hum of an industrial dehumidifier running somewhere in the shadows. but it was what filled the room that made Liam's blood run cold. The space was lined with endless rows of heavy-duty metal shelving and massive sealed wooden crates stamped with faded, cryptic serial numbers. In the center of the room sat a massive mahogany desk, strangely out of place in the industrial bunker. Atop the desk was an old-fashioned green banker's lamp, an antique rotary telephone, and a single, thick, leather-bound ledger. Liam walked slowly toward the desk, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The mocking laughter of his Uncle Robert and cousin Beatrice echoed in his memory, suddenly feeling very distant and very foolish. He reached the desk and directed his flashlight onto the leather ledger. Embossed in gold lettering on the cover were 3 words: "The True Estate." Trembling, Liam opened the ledger to the first page. It wasn't filled with financial figures. It was a hand-written letter. The ink was faded, but the handwriting was unmistakably his grandfather's, sharp, precise, and completely lucid. "Liam," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means the vultures have picked the bones of the public empire, and you have survived their cruelty with your character intact. Let Robert have the ships. Let Margaret have the buildings. Let Beatrice have the cash. What I have left to them is built on sand, a house of cards designed to collapse the moment I am gone. They have inherited the illusion of power. You, my boy, have inherited the reality." Liam's eyes widened as he read the next line, feeling the ground beneath him figuratively shift. The farmhouse was just the lock. What lay in the crates around him was a secret that could bring the entire Caldwell dynasty to its knees. Liam's hands trembled so violently that he had to set the heavy leather ledger down on the mahogany desk. The quiet hum of the underground dehumidifier was the only sound in the cavernous bunker as he read his grandfather's elegant, fading handwriting. The letter within the pages of The True Estate did not just reveal a hidden fortune. It outlined a meticulously calculated demolition of the Caldwell family empire. "For 40 years I built a monument to capitalism," the letter continued, the ink pressing deeply into the thick paper. "But as my mind began to betray me, my clarity regarding our family sharpened. I saw Robert for what he is, a ruthless parasite who understands how to spend wealth but has no concept of how to generate it. Margaret measures her worth in zip codes and square footage, blind to the foundations crumbling beneath her. And Beatrice is a creature of pure vanity, hollowed out by her own insatiable greed." Liam turned the page, the dry parchment rustling loudly. "When my diagnosis of vascular dementia was confirmed 5 years ago, I knew my time to protect my legacy was ending. So during my remaining windows of lucidity, I went to work. I did not leave Robert a $400 million logistics empire, Liam. I left him a hollow shell. Over the past half-decade, I quietly transferred all legitimate, debt-free contracts out of Caldwell Logistics. I replaced them with highly toxic, over-leveraged liabilities. I took out staggering, hidden loans against the company using offshore entities. The primary creditors, Deutsche Bank and Credit Suisse, have clauses in their contracts that trigger immediate debt maturity upon my death. The moment the probate clears, Robert will not be a CEO. He will be the target of the largest corporate bankruptcy and federal fraud investigation of the decade. A cold sweat broke out across the back of Liam's neck. He thought of his uncle's flushed, arrogant face in the lawyer's office, laughing about bulldozers. Margaret's beloved Manhattan real estate portfolio, the letter went on, mortgaged to the absolute hilt with balloon payments coming due in exactly 90 days. As for Beatrice, the offshore accounts I left her in the Cayman Islands National Bank are indeed full of cash, However, they are also deeply entangled with shell companies I intentionally flagged to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the IRS for aggressive money laundering. By accepting those accounts, she has legally accepted the liability for a massive federal crime. Liam stepped back from the desk, his mind reeling. Harrison Caldwell hadn't just disinherited his ungrateful children. He had handed them the instruments of their own destruction, wrapped in the guise of everything they ever desired. They had grabbed the bait with both hands. "They abandoned me to my illness," Harrison wrote, the handwriting turning slightly jagged. "But you, Liam, you gave up your career. You sat by my bed when the shadows terrified me. You bathed me, fed me, and treated a broken old man with dignity. You did this expecting nothing, knowing the others would likely take it all. That is why you are the sole keeper of the true estate." Liam grabbed his flashlight and moved away from the desk, approaching the closest row of massive wooden crates. Stenciled on the side of the first crate were the faded letters P.S. Metals, Geneva. Using the heavy crowbar he had brought down from the kitchen, Liam wedged the iron tip under the reinforced lid of the crate. He threw his entire weight onto the bar. The rusted nails shrieked in protest before the heavy wooden lid splintered and gave way. Liam shoved it aside, raising his flashlight. Inside, packed tightly in custom-molded protective foam, were dozens of dull yellow bricks. Liam reached down and picked one up. It was incredibly heavy, weighing nearly 30 pounds. He wiped away a layer of dust with his thumb. Stamped into the gleaming surface of the metal was the hallmark of Pamp Suisse, one of the most prestigious gold refineries in the world, marking the bar as 999.9 fine gold. Breathing heavily, Liam moved to the next crate. He pried it open to find row upon row of vacuum-sealed packages. Slicing one open with his utility knife, he found stacks of pristine, vintage bearer bonds from UBS and various untraceable Swiss banking institutions, financial instruments that belonged to whoever physically held them, completely invisible to the IRS and immune to corporate seizure. He moved frantically now, opening a third, a fourth, a fifth crate. He found velvet-lined lockboxes containing GIA, certified flawless diamonds from Antwerp, platinum ingots, and watertight polymer cases filled with rare historical documents and first-edition books worth millions at auction. Finally, in a small steel lockbox at the very end of the row, Liam found a thick stack of legal documents drawn up by a private law firm in Delaware. It was a blind, impenetrable trust. The documents proved that Liam was the sole, legally protected owner of everything within the Oakhaven bunker. The bunker itself was entirely off the grid, constructed by independent contractors decades ago who had all been bound by ironclad non-disclosure agreements. Liam sank to the cold concrete floor, leaning his back against a crate holding at least $12 million in gold bullion. He looked up at the ceiling of the bunker, tears of overwhelming relief and shock stinging his eyes. His grandfather had not lost his mind. He had orchestrated a masterpiece of absolute, blinding justice. The rotting farmhouse was never a joke. It was a camouflage, a repellent designed to keep the greedy, superficial members of the family as far away as possible. They saw peeling paint and sagging porches. They saw something beneath them. And because they were too arrogant to look closer, they had willingly walked into their own graves. Liam wiped his eyes, a slow, hard smile spreading across his face. He stood up, dusted off his knees, and walked back to the mahogany desk. He closed the heavy leather ledger, turning off the antique green banker's lamp. It was time to go back to the surface. He had a lot of work to do, and a very entertaining show to watch. It took precisely 4 months for the illusion to shatter. Liam watched it all unfold from the comfort of the newly renovated Oakhaven farmhouse. The sagging porch had been rebuilt with reinforced oak, the roof replaced with weather-resistant slate, and the interior fully modernized. High-speed satellite internet kept him connected to the outside world, while a state-of-the-art security system, funded by the discreet sale of 2 gold bars in Geneva, monitored the encroaching woods. It started on a Tuesday morning. Liam was drinking coffee in his newly installed kitchen when his tablet screen lit up with breaking news alerts from Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. Caldwell Logistics Files. Chapter 11. Amidst massive SEC raid. Liam tapped the video link. The footage showed federal agents in windbreakers carrying boxes of hard drives and documents out of the Caldwell corporate headquarters in Boston. A separate clip showed Uncle Robert, looking pale, disheveled, and 10 years older, being shoved into the back of a black government SUV. The news anchor's voice was relentless. Robert Caldwell, CEO of the logistics giant, was taken into federal custody this morning following revelations of billions in hidden corporate debt and alleged systemic fraud. Sources say the company's creditors, including Deutsche Bank, have initiated immediate liquidation procedures. Robert's $400 million inheritance was gone, replaced by the very real threat of a 20-year federal prison sentence. 2 weeks later, Aunt Margaret's downfall made the local New York papers. Without the financial backing of the logistics company to artificially inflate her credit, the balloon mortgages on her Manhattan high-rises defaulted. Liam read with grim satisfaction that her beachfront Hamptons estate was seized by the bank and immediately put up for auction to cover her staggering debts. She was left penniless, forced to move into a tiny, rented apartment in Queens, her socialite friends instantly abandoning her the moment her bank accounts froze. But Cousin Beatrice's fate was the most spectacular of all. Her relentless social media bragging had acted as a beacon for federal investigators. When she attempted to wire $50 million from the Cayman Islands National Bank to purchase a luxury villa in Monaco, the transaction tripped the dormant IRS alarms Harrison had meticulously planted. Interpol froze her assets globally. Liam watched a viral cell phone video of Beatrice, screaming hysterically and clutching a designer handbag, as French authorities impounded her newly purchased yacht right off the coast of Cannes. She was currently fighting extradition back to the United States on charges of international money laundering and tax evasion. They had been kings and queens of the world. Now, they were nothing. The climax of their desperation arrived on a freezing afternoon in late November. Liam was in his study, drafting blueprints for the boutique architectural firm he was preparing to launch, when the perimeter alarm chimed. He pulled up the security camera feed on his monitor. Standing at the heavy iron security gate at the base of the Oakhaven driveway was Uncle Robert. He had arrived in a taxi, presumably because his luxury vehicles had been repossessed. He was wearing a rumpled coat, shivering in the cold, and repeatedly buzzing the intercom. Liam put on a heavy jacket, walked out into the freezing air, and made his way down the long dirt driveway. When he reached the gate, Robert gripped the iron bars, his eyes wide and frantic. "Liam!" "Thank God," Robert gasped, his breath misting in the cold air. "Liam, you have to help me. They've frozen everything. I can't even afford a decent defense attorney. Margaret is bankrupt. Beatrice is facing a decade in federal prison. It was a trap, Liam. The old man set us up. We have nothing." Liam stood on the other side of the gate, his hands casually shoved into his jacket pockets. His expression was completely unreadable. "I saw the news, Robert. It sounds like you severely mismanaged the company. It wasn't me, Robert shrieked, his voice cracking. The debt was already there. He hid it from us. Listen to me, Liam. Your family. You're the only one who isn't tied up in this litigation. I know you don't have much, but you have this land. Oakhaven. It's 20 acres. You can take out a mortgage on the property. Give me the cash so I can hire a crisis management team. When I get the company back, I'll pay you triple. Liam stared at his uncle. He remembered the cold laughter in the law office. He remembered the years of isolation, changing his grandfather's soiled sheets while Robert was sipping scotch in first class. I can't do that, Robert, Liam said softly, his voice devoid of anger, echoing only a profound, chilling indifference. Why not? Are you still holding a grudge over a few jokes at the reading of the will? Be a man, Liam, Robert begged, rattling the heavy iron gate. It's not a grudge, Liam replied, turning his back to the gate and beginning to walk up the driveway. He paused and looked back over his shoulder. It's a matter of legality. Grandfather's will had a very strict condition regarding my inheritance. I am never to sell this land. And more importantly, Liam offered a small, polite smile. I am never to allow any other member of the Caldwell family to set foot upon it. Good luck with the SEC, Robert. Liam ignored the desperate, echoing screams of his uncle as he walked back to the warmth of the farmhouse. He locked the heavy front door behind him, pouring himself a cup of coffee. He walked over to the kitchen window, looking out over the pristine, quiet woods that protected his sanctuary. Beneath his feet, the hydraulic steel door remained safely hidden beneath the floorboards, guarding a legacy built on patience, loyalty, and ultimate retribution. Liam Caldwell had lost his family, but he had found his future. He sat down at his drafting table, picked up his pencil, and went back to work, building his own empire upon a foundation of solid stone, leaving the ruins of the greedy to crumble into dust. If you enjoyed this dramatic story of hidden secrets, ultimate karma, and a family getting exactly what they deserved, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss out on our thrilling real-life audio dramas. Share this video with your friends and let us know in the comments below. What would you have done if you found the Oakhaven bunker? Thanks for watching.